Hi guys, this is Nadia from Bali Crafts, and today I want to show you how to make a 3D amphora wire basket. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button to get updates on all of my latest videos. I quite often do kits for my tutorials, and I also do PDFs and other more elaborate tutorials, so pop over to my shop and see if there's anything that you fancy. Also, if you want to share your work, we have an awesome little artist group on Facebook, and I'll pop a link below. Right, let's get started. So to begin with, we need to create the base. Now, obviously, this is going to be the most fiddliest of them all, the sections. So we're going to cut our 3 lengths of wire, and we are going to lay them across each other and wrap our weaving wire around. So what I'm doing here is I've looped the weaving wire on one side, I folded it in half, and I am wrapping the wire one under and one over. So you can see me do it here, and then I'm going to rotate. So I'm going to show you again. So I'm rotating, and what I'm doing here, the wire that's coming from over is now going underneath the next set, like so, and then the wire that came from under is going to go over the next set. So I'm going to rotate, and you can adjust the base wires as you go along. So the wire that's coming from underneath is now going to go over the next set of base wires. Then I'm going to rotate, and the wire that was previously over is now going to go under and going to go over the next set, and then I'm going to rotate. So it's quite important that you do this in the same pattern. So you notice that I will take the wire that's from under and always bring this over the next set of base wires, and then so forth. So you're just going to repeat this pattern until you have gone around 3 or 4 times, and that's actually enough to bind all of the wires together. So I'll show you one more time. So I'm going to go under with the wire, and I'm going to bring it, I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see better. This is what it looks like, and I'm going to continue all the way around. So once we've done that, it should be fairly stable attached, and we're going to now separate out all of the base wires to make sure they are all at the same angle separated. So this is going to make it a little bit more flimsy again, and the wires will have a tendency to flop around just because there is an angle. So keep your thumb over the middle at the moment. You can see here what I'm talking about. So spread out the wires so that they're all at an equal angle. It's quite important that they're all pretty as straight as possible. Alright, so the next step is to actually create a basket weave, and we've got 2 wires to work with. Alright, so the way this works is they always alternate position. So while one wire goes over, the other wire will go under, and then they cross. So when one wire goes over, like so, this one goes over, and then the next wire will go underneath and over the next, if that makes sense. I've put a little clip on the side here to show you what I'm talking about. So one wire will go over the basket, the base weave, and the other will go over and alternate position as you go. It's basically a bit like a figure of 8 weave, but with 2 wires. And you just make sure that everything is nice and tight, and that everything is tidy, and you keep going for 5 or 6 rounds. So this is what it looks like. And the next step now obviously is to shape. So what I'm doing first here to get the basket, this is going to be a little bit flimsy still, so we need to shape the wires initially in a sort of bulbous shape. What I'm doing here now is bend the outside wire backwards a little bit, so that when we bring the wires up together, they don't actually cross over in the center, if that makes sense. So bend these back a little bit, roughly at the same section, There we go, so that's what it looks like. And I'm bending these upwards, and then the next thing what I found helpful is to bring in a bead that is roughly the size of what you want the basket to be. The bead was a little bit too small, but I didn't have a bigger one, so if you have anything bigger, that'll work. I think this is about 15 centimeters, not 100% sure, but find something that works for you, and then you can shape the wires around it. It looks a little bit fiddly at this stage, but it actually makes quite a big difference, or it did for me. So what I'm doing next is I'm shaping the wires against that bead, and that will help me to get a more symmetrical shape. And I'll keep going until I've got a sort of good seat. So that's much better. I've arranged the wires, you can see. So take your time with that and press the wires against the bead. What we're going to do next is create the opening. So roughly at the same section where you want the opening to be, bend the wires at the top, and we're going to bend them backwards. And just take your time again with that. It's quite important that you bend them back at roughly the same place so that everything is nice and symmetrical. And that's what it looks like. So I'm quite happy with that. So you range it obviously until everything is as straight as possible. It'll still be quite flimsy at this stage, so just take your time. And next we're going to repeat the exact same weave as we did before. So obviously it is one wire goes over, and then the next wire goes in the opposing direction. It goes under and then out. So we just alternate the way we bring the wires in. So one wire goes from the inside around the wire, and then the next weaving wire goes from the outside around the next wire, and so forth. We just keep repeating this. So as I said earlier, this is kind of like a figure of 8 weave with 2 wires, and we just keep going all the way around until we get to the top. So when you get towards the middle, you will need more wire. So I'm just adding in a piece. You could really start with a much longer length of wire, but I don't like doing that because it's difficult to control the wire when it's too long. So I opted to add in wire as I go along, and the way to do this is just bring in a new piece and you hold it on one end and just continue your wraps, and eventually it will settle in and bind and will be as strong as the other wire. So you would then just continue with the weave as you did before. Now when you get a little bit further up and the wires sort of come back together at the top, your weave will have a tendency to slide up. So when you're weaving, you will have to hold the weave with your thumb and your forefinger in place so that it doesn't slide up, because when that happens, it will narrow, it will pull the wires together if you don't take care, and it will narrow the mouth of the amphora. We don't really want that. So try and keep your finger over the weave in the middle to keep everything in place. So once you get to the top, we are needing to do a little bit of a different design. So just make sure you can arrange. The beauty with this kind of weave is that you can arrange the base wire still, because obviously it's not tightly wrapped, so you can still shift and place the base wires to be as parallel and symmetrical as possible. So next we're going to cut every other wire, and this will create the bottom detail of the amphora, where we're going to add the little beaded details. So every second wire I'm going to trim down to roughly about, I think this is a sort of 8 millimeters to a centimeter. So now I've done this, and what I'm going to do now is simply roll these wires in, and that's just to create a little bit of detail. You don't have to do this I just thought it looks quite nice. You can keep them long and incorporate them into the top design. I just thought it looks quite nice. So what I'm doing here is just using my round nose pliers to roll them in. So that's what it looks like. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. And the next stage is to shape the top detail. So what I'm doing here is give the mouth of the piece a rough sort of downward swirl. I want to keep it upright as much as I can with a little bit of a swirl, because this is going to be the base to create the sort of mouth of the amphora. So it's slight downward curve for now. That's what it looks like. So next what we're going to do is the weaving wire is a different weave. We're only going to use one weaving wire. And what I'm doing here is I'm going underneath each base wire, wrap around once, move on to the next base wire, wrap around once, move on to the next base wire, wrap around once, and all the while we are ignoring the small loops we made at the bottom just now, and this is all we're going to be doing until you are satisfied with the look. And it's a much easier weave than we have used for the basket itself. So very easy to do, and try and keep it as straight as possible as well. So that's what it looks like. So very simple, and I'm going to do a few more, and you can see it looks quite nice for the mouth of the design. So once you're happy, we're just going to wrap around the wire once, and we're going to then trim off those weaving wires because we don't need them anymore. These base wires are a little bit too long. I'm going to cut off the length I don't need, and I've left roughly another centimeter again because we're going to create loops once again. So taking my round nose pliers, and I'm thinning out the end to give it a little bit of a pointed tip, and then all I'm doing here is I'm curling these in to add the details later. We're going to do this to all of them. So next we're creating the little details for the side, and this is just 3 of our beads. I think I've used 3mm and 4mm beads and some 0.4mm wire, which is 26 gauge, and all I'm doing is a rosary link. So on each side, doing the same on the other, and this is just to secure. If you can also use some thicker wire to prevent it from breaking. I just wasn't sure whether it would actually be loose enough, if that makes sense, to sit on the side. It would probably be too rigid with your 22.6 gauge, so 0.4 is what I've used. So just trim off the ends, and then we're going to be joining these with a jump ring. So we're going to do enough to go all the way around, and we're going to join with a jump ring. So next, if you don't have ball-headed head pins, all I'm doing here is I'm using my blowtorch to create a little balled end on some 0.4mm wire. You can buy these fine head pins. If you don't have them, you can make them like that. So it's quite easy. Any creme brulee torch will work for that. Super easy to do, and it's quite handy to be able to do this. So again, rosary link for the little detail, and these are going to be at the top. So all I'm doing here is I'm opening up the loop at the top, and I am hooking in the little detail we just created. Now obviously this is all personal preference, you can do whatever you like. This is just what I've done with mine. And then we're just going to close this in again. That's what it looks like. So next I'm going to hook in. So this is very fiddly business, so you do this whichever way you find best. I did this individually when I was making the video, but I found later on that if I create a chain with jump rings and all those details first and then hook them on, it's much easier to actually add it on. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so next we need to create a little spilling detail, which I thought looks quite interesting. So same thing again, we're going to do some sort of rosary linking with our drops. So I'm crossing the wires, and I'm using my round nose pliers, and I've placed them in between where the wires cross. And all I'm doing now is I move the longer wire around my round nose pliers from behind. I come from behind and I'm wrapping my wire around the crossed wires, which will capture the one wire, and I'm trimming that off, and that's what it looks like. So easy little design. And next we need to feed the chain that we're going to attach the beads to. So what I'm doing here is I'm grabbing a piece of wire and I'm going to attach the chain to that and feed it through to near the bottom of the basket, and that will just capture the chain in place. So pull that through, and then we're going to twist these two wires at the bottom together, and that will hold the chain in place. Don't do it just yet, just wait a little bit. I was a bit too quick there to close it off, but we need to add a bigger bead just now, so don't close it off just yet. So next we're going to add the drops. I found if you add more drops in a bunch at the top, it looks quite nice, but again, this is personal preference. You can do this whichever way you like. So as I was saying earlier, don't close off just yet. I've decided later on to add a bigger bead just to give a bit more bulk and to close off the mouth of the basket. Again, you can do this or you don't have to, up to you. I just felt it was a good addition, so I decided to do that. And lastly, you need to decide where you want your balancing point to be, and for that I've just added a jump ring somewhere near the edge, to get a sort of good angle for the basket to hang on. And then I've added another jump ring. Again, this is entirely up to you, just and how you want to do this. So, and that's that. So that's the whole pendant done. So I really hope you enjoyed this. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel to get all the updates. And as I said earlier, we've got an awesome little artist group on Facebook. I'll pop a link below in the description. I would absolutely love it if you could visit my my Instagram and my Facebook and my TikTok if you like, and they are all under Mbali Crafts, under all social media, so they're easy to find. And yeah, so don't forget to visit my website if you're interested in some square wire, half round wire, or PDF tutorials. Got loads of those as well. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope to see you soon.